And all of you here are here to be the voice for freedom this year. Last year, who here went last year? Can you raise your hands, please? We have about 8 of you. This year, there's 25 who signed up who went last year. Last year was Speak on Behalf of the voiceless people in North Korea. This year, the time is even greater than ever before because there's nobody else to speak for them. Our congressmen, our elected officials in Washington, because of the current economy situation, have pretty much given up on the issue. And unless you go there and press it, then there is nobody to speak for them. I am here, my name is Sam Kim. I am one of the directors for this event. And actually what I'm doing is I'm directing the events that will be happening in Washington, D.C. The Press Club Conference, the West Lawn, each and every one of those. Also, Pastor Dan, who was here a little bit earlier, can you stand up, please? He is also going with us, and he will be directing the mission spiritual portion of the events. Every morning, we will start off with prayer. Every evening, we will have a reflection of the day. So it's not just an internship mission where you go to Washington, it's also an opportunity for you to spiritually revive yourselves too. My job here right now is to inform you and the parents as to what to expect in Washington, D.C. I know you heard a lot of different things about what this program's about. Some of you asked me, will we meet congressmen? Will we see congressmen? And those are the items that I hope to go over today. And by the end of today, you will have a good opportunity to know what it is that is expected of you, what the event is all about, and all of those questions. First, let me introduce you a little bit about the Korean Church Coalition. The Korean Church Coalition is an organization of Korean American churches located throughout the United States. We are composed of over 2,500 churches, and we have a single voice. The reason why we are able to speak in Washington, D.C., the reason why congressmen and senators listen to us or try to do what they can to help us is because we have grassroots in every single state and major city in the United States. If we go to Washington and we see a congressman from South Carolina, we have 12 churches in South Carolina. So they will talk to their members of Congress and say, can you meet with us? Can you do this or that? So we're the only organization right now is that kind of grassroots fighting for North Korea human rights. So we, together with a lot of the other groups, LINK, North Korea Freedom Coalition, SALT, we all form one voice on this issue. We also work with President Barack Obama. That's a letter that we received from President Barack Obama promising to join us in speaking on behalf of the voiceless. Also, we've worked with President Bush, and when we first did our inaugural conference, he sent us a greetings letter, and also we were instrumental in passage of the North Korea Human Rights Act. The North Korea Human Rights Act was a bill which passed in 2004, which allowed currently about 100 North Korean refugees to enter into this country. The bill was going nowhere. That Senator Sam Brownback was the 6 refugees who entered in 2006. When I first joined Korean Church Coalition in 2004, in February, Joseph Chai's sister, Sarah, actually called Sam Brownback's office and said, hey, I heard about this bill. What's going on? A person named Sean Woo called back and said, the bill's dead. It'd be a miracle if it passed. Where are you Koreans? I wish there would be some Korean Americans to back us up. But we started backing them up, and Sam Brownback was able to get it passed that same year, a bill which he thought would be a miracle to pass. And actually, 1 week ago, one of the 6 refugees who entered in 2006 got his U.S. citizenship. I think that deserves a clap, doesn't it? Next, I'd like to hear Sam Brownback at our conference last year talking about passages of the North Korean Human Rights Act.
Activities in your efforts. And what can you get done by your advocacy and by your prayer? That North Korean Human Rights Act would not have passed but for your prayer. I remember when it passed because I was carrying the bill and it was at the end of the session and it was just kind of getting lost and we weren't getting it done. Remember this one, Sean? And I was out at your convention that you were having in Los Angeles going, look, we're trying to get this done and I hope we can, but and I got back into Washington and the next day that thing passed. And you guys had been out praying.
Now, the North Korean orphans need our help too, and that's one of the reasons why we are going back to Washington, D.C. I know a lot of you were here last year, and we went to D.C., and we actually lobbied for the same bill. And at that time I said, you know what, if we go there, we get 25 co-sponsors on this House version of the bill, then it should go to the House, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and it should pass. Well, you guys did a spectacular job, and we got 36 that actually co-sponsored the bill last year. But the session ended, and the Congress had too many things on their agenda, so it went out, and then when the congressional session ended last year, all bills that did not pass, they died. So this year, Congressman Ed Royce reintroduced the bill, and so now it's before Congress again. And this time we have until into the congressional session, which is next year. So we have until 2012 to try to get this bill passed. What are North Korean orphans? There's currently about 20,000 of them living in China right now. And what this bill is trying to do is to get them to enter into the U.S. Here is a little bit video, which is a little bit about what is going on in China regarding the orphans.
The first major flood hits North Korea, ravaging the country and destroying crops in an unprecedented way. Famine follows, and an estimated 3 million North Koreans die of starvation, which produces 200,000 orphans. Many of these ones have become refugees without a home. Some are left to beg on the streets, where these children's fates involve imprisonment, neglect, or human trafficking. Tomorrow is not guaranteed for them.
The North Korea Refugee Orphan Adoption Act, basically what it will do is it will allow the North Korean orphans to enter into the U.S. quickly. Right now, the North Korean orphans cannot enter into the U.S. The reason is because they're orphans. They don't have any documents. Without documents, they do not have the opportunity to enter into the U.S. What the North Korea Refugee Orphan Adoption Act does is it allows them to make a special exception where if you're an orphan, then you can enter into the U.S. without the proper documentation. It also allows them to be adopted into a willing and ready and able parents. As you know, there are thousands of families in America which are willing to adopt any orphans, including North Korean orphans. So on June 26th to 30th, we will be going to Washington, D.C. to assist the North Korean orphans in passage of the North Korea Orphan Adoption Act. The events that will be happening is the first night and the second night, you will be mentored by leading experts in the field. Suzanne Schulte of the North Korea Freedom Coalition. We have Michael Horowitz, who is a Georgetown law professor. He graduated #1 at Yale Law School. He is coming to speak to you guys for about 20 minutes to tell you why you need to do what you're doing and that how effective you guys will be. We have Jerry Ginzer, who is a graduate from Cornell, Harvard, University of Michigan. He's a law professor at University of Pennsylvania and also Georgetown. He will be there. Dr. Scott Flips, Han Sok Kang, Shanu, Hannah Kim, they will all be there, along with Dr. Shannon Lim from the Billy Graham Center, Hans Schneider, and there's several others who will also be there. They are coming without pay to talk to you guys, to teach you, to train you, and tell you the importance of why you need to do what you are doing. Also, The first night we will be going to the National Press Club. And at the National Press Club, you will have an opportunity to speak to the world. Some of you actually will be doing speeches there. The second, right after the National Press Club, you will be going to the White House Lafayette Park. Right in front of the White House, we have this park reserved where you will have an opportunity to speak to our president to continue, keep his promise, and to continue speaking on behalf of the orphans and the North Korean refugees. You will have an opportunity to march in front of the White House sidewalk. And the following day, you will have an opportunity at the restaurant at the U.S. Capitol, where we will be gathered and we will be able to speak to our members of Congress and Senate. You will be joined by members of Congress. And this year, odd years are very difficult to get members of Congress to come. Why? It's not election year. Last year was an election year. Next year is the easiest. Why? We have the presidential election, so everybody wants to come if they think that they can draw votes from us. But we did manage to get members of Congress to come, and Senator Richard Burr, who is also the sponsor of the Senate version of the North Korea Human Rights Act, he is doing everything in his North Korean Refugee Orphan Adoption Act. He is doing everything he can to open his schedule to come. Many of you will have opportunity to actually meet and shake hands and greet with members of Congress. Last year we were joined by Congressman Frank Wood, Ed Royce, Elena Ross-Layton. She is now the chairperson of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, which is one of the most powerful persons in Washington, and Congressman Scott Garrett. Afterwards, you will have an opportunity to march over to the congressional offices to actually meet with members of Congress to ask them to pass the North Korea Orphan Act, and also to not forget about the issue that we are vigilant, that we are going to continue to be their voice, and that we, as their citizens of the United States, it is our right to ask them to demand that they continue to also join us in speaking for them. And at the end, we will actually have a concert. It's called the Fresh Freedom Concert. Why Fresh Freedom Concert? Fresh because it's a time for you to come. Many of you are experiencing this North Korea human rights issue for the first time. You're fresh into the issue. And Freedom Concert because we want you to make a commitment. Not just to make this a one-time event, but for you to actually come, to actually learn the issues. And once you become aware of the issues, it's impossible to remain silent. That you will join us in continuing to be the voice for all of the suffering North Korean refugees and orphans. We have Sanya and Jonas from JSLE who will be joining us along with a couple other groups for that event. The following is a short video. It recaps the last year's event of what we did, so you have a better idea and picture of what's to expect.